The U.S.-Iran nuclear talks will resume in the coming days. Now, that's according to sources from both the European Union and Tehran. To discuss this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, joining us once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, what's the big significance of these talks?
You know, that's a great question because common sense would dictate that we should not get back into these talks, that the Western world should abandon these talks, that the behavior that we've seen from the Iranian regime, whether it's about importing, exporting terror, whether it's about continuing on with its weapons program, whether it's about, not being transparent and taking away cameras and not allowing IAEA, those are the inspectors from the UN, to come in, whether it's about, chest thumping and continuing its activities in the region, or whatever they're doing at the negotiating table that has not led to a deal thus far. What on earth do the Europeans and the Americans believe that they will get out of the Iran regime is beyond me. But it seems as though this is the policy that they have set out for Iran. So rather than being able to pressure the Iranian regime the way that the Trump administration was very much in support of, they would rather continue with this deal. Now, day after day, there are Iran protests going on the ground over there. The Iranian people are telling us, don't get back into the deal. Do not normalize relations with our regime. Help us. And even if it's a verbal, even if it's a statement from the White House podium, give us some support so that we can have a grassroots revolution the way we did in 1979, which got us to a very bad place with the Islamic regime. But hopefully we can have another revolution and have a better government. So it makes no sense at all to go back to your original question. The significance of it is that this is the policy that the Western world has carved out for themselves. They would like to normalize relations. They are after appeasement. And with the Iranian regime, it seems like the harder they play to get, then the more that the Western world wants this deal. It's crazy, but this is where we're headed.
And as the nuclear talks continue, Iran apparently launched a rocket into space, which naturally drew condemnation from Washington.
Right. So think about it. If you're trying to get into a deal, if you're trying to get billions of dollars from the West, why would you be, again, flexing your muscles this way and launching the rocket? And again, to your point, Hal, Washington will issue statements of condemnation, whether it's about the weapons program, whether it's about not letting in the inspectors on their in their facilities, whether it's about the protests. But then they still want to go forward with the deal. So it really doesn't make sense. If you line up all the evidence, you'd think that the Washington would abandon this deal and say, you know what, we got to not only keep these sanctions in place, not only keep all these bad actors and bad players on the terror list, but to really think of a new policy regarding Iran, because it's just not working.
U.S.-sponsored talks between Israel and a number of Gulf states have taken amid increased threats from Tehran. Lisa, that included officers from both United Arab Emirates and Bahrain. Oman and Kuwait did not participate, however.
Yeah, so this is about, and we've seen this before, and I'll really go back to the Abraham Accords to illustrate the point, is that the Middle East will be divided into modern states and not so modern states. And the modern states are the ones, not that they particularly are very fond of Israel, and that's not their agenda. Their agenda is not to be stuck in the dark ages. Their agenda is not to be taken over by terrorists. Their agenda is to move forward and be prosperous and to be involved in economic deals and have technology and have apps and cell phones and iPads and all that wonderful stuff. And for that reason, many of these countries like the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco have signed on to the Abraham Accords. And those are the same list of countries that you just listed that will sit down to come up with a way to curb the Iranian regime's influence. Now, the Iranian regime is the original Islamic State. We think of ISIS and like, oh, they're so big and bad. ISIS was nothing compared to the Iranian regime. The Iranian regime is Shiite, and they want to spread their influence and their territory, influence, everything throughout the region. And these Persian Gulf states that you mentioned, along with Israel, want to obviously curb that sphere of influence that is growing. So that's why you have the list of countries, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar pretty much plays the line because they want to have both sides and they don't really want to pick sides. But you do see that the way that these Arab nations are falling really determines how they will perceive their own future.
Health officials in Afghanistan, Lisa, are warning of disease outbreaks among earthquake survivors. More than 1,000 people have already died following that devastating 6.1 magnitude earthquake, which rocked the Taliban-led nation.
Yes, this is a huge devastation for that country. Obviously, a very, very, very harsh earthquake with infrastructure that can't support that kind of quake. And then you have, and obviously not the Taliban is not going to take care of these people. They're not going to provide the right facilities and hospital care and rescue aid workers, et cetera, to get the people out in time and to save lives, et cetera. Now, the interesting part is, while we know that this was a very harsh earthquake, while we feel for the people of Afghanistan, we really can't trust the information coming out of Afghanistan either, because it is run by the Taliban. The media, the government, everything is run by the Taliban, and they're using this earthquake to take advantage of, obviously, humanitarian aid and global sympathy, and they're asking for their frozen assets to be unfrozen and to be given back to Afghanistan. This is something that the Taliban have always wanted since coming into power. So now they will take advantage of this time period and say, you know what? It's for the people of Afghanistan. But will that money and aid, if it is given back to Afghanistan, will it go to the people of Afghanistan? I hardly, I doubt it. It will go towards terrorism and the Taliban and really growing their power over the poor people of Afghanistan.
You know what, you bring up a very valuable point. I'm just thinking that the country's fragile health system is already quite strained. Then you throw in this earthquake, 2,000 people injured, more than 1,000 killed, and 10,000 displaced with the homes being rocked and damaged. Do you think there could be a potential uprising against the Taliban if a lot of the locals do not receive the humanitarian aid that they need so desperately?
It's a great question, because that's how these movements begin, right? They have to be at literal rock bottom, and then have a reason to come out onto the streets. Now, the unfortunate thing is that the people in Afghanistan are very poor. They don't have the right organization or weapons or ability to come out. And the Taliban, they're ruthless. They don't mind, shedding the blood of the Afghan people. They're not truly for the Afghan people. So, I think if they were to do such a thing, it would probably last about 24 to 48 hours, meaning the Taliban would probably, try to put an end to it so quickly that it would not be able to take, any or get any kind of momentum going. But it's a great question, because I do think with time, the poverty, the point you bring up, that's a wonderful point, and to remember, is groups like Hamas and Hezbollah and the Taliban, even the Iranian regime to a certain extent, they have always been able to keep a certain segment of the population as their constituents by providing the soup kitchens and the madrasas, the schools, and really brainwashing a certain segment of the population by also giving them certain of their basic needs. And the Taliban will probably do the same, and have these local spies everywhere by giving a certain segment of the population what they need in order to do their dirty work. And I think it's very unfortunate. A lot of the brains, the brain drain that Afghanistan had. So a lot of people moved out of the country. So the people who are left don't always have the means to have that, political savvy or be able to organize. They can come out onto the streets, but then again, they would be risking their lives to do so.
Lisa, in light of the Supreme Court striking down Roe versus Wade, a number of left-leaning Americans are allegedly turning their rage to former heroes Ruth Bader Ginsburg and former President Barack Obama. Tell me more.
It's very interesting what's going on in the United States right now. It's not our most flattering moment in terms of, the protests, the backlash, the way that they're treating the police, the way that, and ironically, these are in states where abortion will always be allowed, like, California and New York, where it is just part of the culture. And for some reason, they're so fixated on it that it will not go away, and probably won't have any restrictions. So you'll be able to get one. And now you see they're turning on. When you look back, you look at Joe Biden, Barack Obama, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, obviously what people are missing with their knee-jerk reaction to this overturn is that it is based on the Constitution. It's not based on feelings or emotions or the anecdotes of the woman who was raped or the woman who had, a child that had abnormalities. It's not even about that. This is a political decision rooted in the Supreme Court's interpretation of the Constitution. So when they do read, or they have videos of, Joe Biden back in the day, or any one of these liberal heroes, it's unfortunate because they can't even tolerate it, and that's why these facts are often ignored in this discussion to just bring up a lot of emotion. 99% of what we're seeing online in social media and the memes, it's factually incorrect. It's just dishonest. And again, people are bringing up a lot of things from the past and are really ignoring why this was overturned. It's not that we had abortion in this country and now we took it away. It's that now they have decided that it really never was rooted in any sort of legal constitutional premise. It was actually, the premise of it was for the physicians to have liberty, not the woman or the person carrying the baby to have the liberty. So I mean, you and I can have a 5-hour conversation about this. It's a very, very nuanced, which is why it's very difficult to have a conversation with people who are ignorant or choosing to be ignorant of the facts. But it is extremely nuanced. And again, it was a very difficult task for the Supreme Court to make this overturn. But again, they did their job on what they believed was based on the Constitution.
Let's head overseas for just a moment again here, Lisa. There are reports that Russia is going to be sending nuclear-capable missiles to Belarus. Russian President Putin said the weapons transfer would be discussed between the defense ministers of the two countries. Putin also said Russia would help Belarus upgrade its fleet of fighter jets to make them capable of carrying nuclear weapons.
This is all we needed, right? So this is Russia 2.0. They want to equip and train and really bring Belarus into the fold, perhaps. It's interesting. The war and the invasion of Ukraine hasn't really moved forward much. We have a few more territories, but moving very slowly along. But we do see a lot of transfer of weapons in every direction, whether it's going to the Ukrainians, with Russia transferring it to Belarus. It's an interesting concept to think about with the economy being where it is and so much equipment and military aid going around. We don't know what the off ramp will be for Putin on this. And in giving more equipment to Belarus and perhaps bringing them into the war, it doesn't look like he's going to take an off ramp anytime soon. It looks like it's only going to widen the scope of this current war. So all eyes are on that part of the world, and we're hoping for a de-escalation rather than an escalation very soon.
Now, still with Russia, they're edging closer to default amid little sign that investors holding its international bonds had received any payment, Lisa. This could be the nation's first default in decades.
Yes, and let's see if that even happens. I mean, the fact that Russia has been able to hold on for this long is pretty amazing. And the strategy they used is to pay their interest and not to pay the principal, and to be able to stave off those who they owe, and to continue going. And that's exactly what they have done. It looks like everything has basically been kind of frozen for a while, and then they've been able to continue, status quo. But inside Russia, we know a lot of different businesses and franchises and American or European owned businesses have pulled out of the country. So they are struggling in many different ways, perhaps not defaulting just yet. But as you said, Hal, it looks like they're headed in that direction. And of course, only, how long can they survive under these very, very restrictive sanctions?
The group of 7 leaders pledged to raise around $600 billion in private and public funds over the next 5 years to finance needed infrastructure in developing countries and counter China's older multi-trillion-dollar Belt and Road project. Can you explain what that is?
I love that you said older, because you really hit the nail on the head. I don't really need to say much. A little too late on this, Hal. China has had this project for many, many years. This has been China's strategy, and I will explain. China has put trillions of dollars going into all parts of the world and saying, we will give you XYZ in exchange for ABC. And the XYZ is usually roads, infrastructure, bridges, schools, hospitals, telephone lines, internet lines. And in exchange, they want access. And that access is what will give them more territorial power, more influence, and that's exactly what they want. They want to build, their empire, so to speak. And now, the G7 is kind of like showing up and saying, let's raise, a little bit of money. We're going to have a little fund here to kind of combat this strategy that China has had, again, pouring trillions of dollars into places where they have, for example, a 25-year deal with the Iran regime. I mean, these are huge transfers and huge deals. Now, whether China will continue to have the funds to continue with this strategy, or whether it will slow down and focus on other parts of the world, other parts of its strategies, is it's up in the air. But the point being that China has been at this for many years, and it's going to be, honestly, I'm glad that the world has finally realized what China is up to. But again, I don't know if they'll have enough time or manpower or financial resources to combat this.
Our foreign affairs expert and regular contributor, Lisa Daftari, thanks so much for joining us again from Los Angeles.
My pleasure.